here's what the world is talking about this morning here in the UK. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is vowing to exclude sex offenders completely from the British asylum system after it was revealed that a significant number of suspects in live police investigations, that's ongoing investigations into the grooming gangs, are asylum seekers, and many more are non-UK nationals. And that's just one of the findings from the damning report by Baroness Casey into Britain's child abuse gangs, which the Home Secretary also paid tribute to. We have a comment here from the MP for Rochdale, Paul Waugh, about what the consequences of Baroness Casey's report should be.
But the victims also want accountability for anyone in a position of authority. As she has said, anyone who found out about this and failed to act, or knew about it and failed to act. So does she agree with me that no councillor of any political party, no social worker, no police officer, no council officer and no ethnic group should hide from the fierce scrutiny of this national inquiry? Yeah.
Powerful words. Well, we're joined now by survivor Fiona Goddard, who was abused by a grooming gang in Bradford by the time she was 14, alongside filmmaker Anna Hall, who was one of the first to expose the grooming gangs. And she is the person behind the recent Channel 4 documentary, Groomed, A National Scandal, which, again, was an extremely powerful piece of television. Thank you both for being here. Well, let's start with you. So you ran away from home when you were, what, about 12, ended up in care when you were 13. By the time you were 14, you'd been targeted and you were being abused. All these stories have a very similar ring to them. Just tell us how you were sucked into this pit.
The care home that I went into was already targeted by people from that local area. The area it was in had a very high crime rate. And the men used to pull up outside the care home, and as you tried walking to the shop, they'd pull up even on the pavement in front of you and try and, like, block your way and stuff, try and encourage you into the cars. And it was just a case of one night, me and one of the other girls decided to rebel a little bit. We bought a bottle of vodka and we ran out of the care home and walked his way into town. And we needed a lighter, and we asked him, we saw a man at a cash machine and asked him for a lighter, and he said, I don't have one, but I can take you to buy one. And it was just as simple as that.
In the car?
Yeah, we got in the car, he started buying us stuff. He was very nice, not happened to start off with, and then a few months later things went downhill very quick.
So they take their time, don't they?
Yes.
They groom you, basically.
Yes, so I found that they'd get you to open up about your vulnerabilities, and then once you'd expose to them what your vulnerabilities were, they'd start offering you what you were missing, befriend you, lure you into a false sense of security, and target the stuff that they know that was emotionally affecting you. And then that'd be how it'd progress, because then you'd seek comfort in them, and especially with me being in a care home, I didn't have the comfort in the care home. It was different members of staff on shift works. There wasn't really an emotional connection there to anything. There wasn't a sense of belonging or anything.
When you describe these men and how they groomed you, it almost as if they were acting as father figures to you. Is that how you would define it? So
for me, they tried pretending to be my boyfriends, and that wasn't what I was needing at the time. And they quickly realised that, and it turned into a sense of, oh, we're your family, this is where you belong, we're going to protect you, we're going to look after you. And that's how they targeted me. They tried making me feel like I had somewhere to belong.
Got it.
You were sexually abused, raped. At the age of 15, you became pregnant, didn't you? But you weren't allowed to keep your baby.
No, she was adopted. I gave birth 3 days after my 16th birthday, and she was adopted due to me being exposed to abuse and not being able to keep her safe, but yet they left me there for a further 2 years to be abused.
This is part of the pattern, isn't it? That you're being exploited, victimised, raped and abused. And I just want to say the courage that you have to be able to talk about this is remarkable, and I salute you for that. But what we've seen with victims, survivors, is that you're the ones who are punished.
Yeah, I've faced it a lot. Right up until 2023, I've still been fighting for my right to be a mother and be seen within the same category as the rest of the community. I've felt like I've been targeted a lot over the years, and I've been... basically, I felt a bit subhuman, like I was part of a lower grade of society, if that made sense, because of the the abuse that did occur, that it was me that was seen to be tainted. That's part of why I waived my anonymity after the prosecutions in my case, was I didn't want people to think this was a reason to be ashamed anymore. I didn't do nothing wrong.
You're
Well, there were
totally
prosecutions, thankfully, in your case. These guys were dragged by the scruff of the neck into court.
I had to fight tooth and nail for it, though. I'd reported it repeatedly from 2008 to 2013 with no action, and then I exposed it to the media, and that's how we managed to get an investigation
Fiona, tell us what police said to you when you reported it.
So over the years, between 2008 and 2013, I was found, like, in cars with men and stuff like that. They said that I was the reason that society was going downhill by putting working-class men in danger.
Oh, for God's sake.
I was called a child prostitute. I was described as exchanging gifts. It was exchanging sex in return for gifts by 14, and described as running a brothel by 17.
So it was your fault?
Yeah,
All your fault.
repeatedly. They said that I was streetwise and knew how to look after myself, that even though I was a missing person, it wasn't a concern, and they downgraded it. And then someone highlighted the fact I'd been on the child sexual exploitation warning list for a while, so they upgraded it to medium. So there were a lot of stuff like that where it wasn't taken seriously.
Can I also ask, part of grooming is a coercive control as well. That is acknowledged now, but wouldn't have been back when you were being coercively controlled. Just talk to us about the threats, the intimidation, what you were made to do that made you think, not only because it began as a sort of loving father figure, I say loving in inverted commas, there was nothing loving about this, but you were convinced it was loving at the beginning, but then it became threatening.
Yeah, so it started, like, the threat started with videos where they'd show me of them beating someone to death, where you could see the skull actually caving in, or they'd tell me this is where we dump dead bodies, and a few weeks later a body would be found there. They'd turn up after being involved in stabbings, and I'd have to try and help them clean up all that stuff. There was an illegal immigrant who was castrated in Pakistan, and then was wanted by firing squad in the Philippines after he fled from Pakistan. That also came over on the back of a lorry, and he was there, and they were telling us about how he was wanted for going Rambo on women and children. So there were all these levels, like, it was quite subtle, where they were like showing us that there could be dangerous people.
Extreme violence.
Yeah, and then it did go to physical violence, and threatening with, like, vodka bottles to smash them into my eyes and stuff like that.
One thing you have said, and I found this really interesting, that you of all people would be saying this, is that you had some sympathy for some of the younger men in this gang, because you felt they were being groomed into becoming abusers.
So they'd the older men would bring round younger boys that were around our age, and once we'd been, like, plied with the alcohol and the drugs and we're kind of out of it, they'd start telling them to take us into the bedroom, or they were going to go tell the family members they were gay and stuff like this, and then it slowly kind of became normalised. I also found that the younger boys had more empathy with me, and then you'd see it slowly die out over the years.
They'd be corrupted by the older men. Yeah, yeah.
It's honestly, and OK, Fiona, you're amazing. And I'm glad there were convictions.
Thank you.
And I hope that you feel this report is going to address many of the issues that you've suffered. Anna, you started investigating this back in the late 90s, so this has been going on for decades. And it was because you talked to Bernardo's, who were the charity, who had said, these girls are victims, but they're being treated as the ones who are doing something wrong. Your journalism has been a huge contributing factor, I'm sure, to what has happened now with Baroness Casey's report. But, I mean, we get chills listening to what Fiona has said. You must have spoken to hundreds of girls like Fiona.
Yes, and unfortunately, nothing that Fiona has said surprises me. You know, over the years, I have heard this story over and over again.
I see you nodding at every point of that story.
And I think the reality is, what people don't understand is, you know, these girls, these women were accused of, you know, being prostitutes or consenting to their own abuse, right? And what I have realised over the years is that, you know, Fiona was a child, these are children, and they are terrified because once they get caught up into this pattern, the threat of violence is... It's the threat of violence, but it's also violence.
Yeah.
So there is violence. So, you know, you had Jade and Chantel on yesterday, who were in my film that went out recently, and there is violence. They are accused of they're being beaten up, or, you know, your mum's going to be raped. There's all sorts of threats that are given to the young girls. And that's how the control happens.
Can I ask...
So it's about control, it's about power.
The report is hopeful because it has 12 very solid recommendations.
Yes.
And the Home Secretary is committed to implementing all 12 of them.
Yes.
Can I ask one particular, because you have spoken and spent a lot of time with Jade,
yes,
who yesterday told us and told viewers that she was convicted in relation to abuse, and none of the abusers who were responsible were convicted.
Yeah.
She was clearly the victim in that case.
Yeah.
The report recommends that those convictions are addressed. I mean, I just wonder how many victims there are who themselves were convicted despite the fact they were groomed, they were intimidated, they were coerced.
I mean, I think there were some vital things that were announced yesterday, and, you know, it's our job as a society, as journalists, to hold this government to account.
Yeah.
So with Jade, I mean, that announcement is so important because it means there will be hundreds of girls and women like Jade who are living with a criminal conviction. So, as Jade said to you yesterday, she went from being on a police protection order to being arrested within 18 days.
And imprisoned.
And she went to prison.
Yeah.
So Jade is living with that criminal conviction, which
she's on the sex offenders register. She cannot take her children on school trips.
Exactly. So that is huge, and I want to make sure, you know, it's really important that we make sure Jade was convicted for inciting sexual activity with a minor.
Yes.
She wasn't convicted of child prostitution, she was convicted of inciting sexual activity. But that needs to be overturned.
Well, it's continuing abuse, isn't it?
Outrageous.
These outstanding convictions are simply the abuse continuing.
Exactly.
I just want to say something to you, Fiona, which I know our viewers will be thinking, having heard you. Your composure in the way that you tell a terrible story, an absolutely appalling story, is remarkable. I think you're a remarkable human being. To be able to sit here and go through that with us, and many things you can't say because, you know, of the time of day that we're on television here, but to say it with such composure and strength and balance and fairness. What you said about the young men, quite extraordinary. I think you're remarkable.
I've had to spend a lot of time trying to think about what happened and make it make sense in my head. And then after the convictions, I decided that I wanted to turn something bad into something good. I wanted to try and make what happened to me make sense and have a meaning. And that's part of what made me want to try and get all this, and people like Jade that hasn't had the justice she deserves and she's living with lifelong consequences. I've been lucky, I've managed to fight for my own justice, and I've got recommendations for my criminal record to be overturned from a serious case review. But there's so many people that are still fighting for the same thing, and I had to do it alone, and I don't want other people to do it alone. I want them to know that there is other people that understand.
Well, it's a privilege to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Brilliant to meet you. Thank you. And Anna, well done for all your work.
Yeah,
Groomed, a national scandal, is still available to watch, isn't it, on Channel 4?
Journalism at its best. Thank you.
Well, a spokesperson for Bradford Council said we've acknowledged that there were significant failings in Fiona's care and we have apologised to her for this. Fiona's case was looked at in depth as part of the independent review into child exploitation, sexual exploitation in Bradford. We will obviously cooperate fully with this latest national inquiry.
Meanwhile, West Yorkshire Police have previously said that tackling child sexual exploitation and abuse is a top priority for the force. This is an abhorrent crime which has a lifelong impact on the victims and the survivors.
And if you are affected by that issue or any of the issues we discuss, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.